All right, let's take you back. I think it was in 1970. This old war movie came out. The movie was called Tora, 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 and it basically chronicled the Japanese side of Pearl Harbor and the attacks that they had on the United States. Now, Tora, Tora, Tora translates to attack, attack, attack. That is Khris Middleton. And you know what? As a matter of fact, that is perpetually James Middleton. I don't know if there's a single player, not just in basketball today, but in the history of basketball, whose legacy rides more on not just a single game, but on every single shot that he takes. Because it just feels like if there is a succession of shots that he misses, everyone's like, oh my gosh, Khris Middleton, no. I don't do this, but people do. But if he makes said shots in a rapid succession, everybody's like, this is the most elite two-way player in the game. This is the best Robin to Giannis's Batman in the game. Two-time All-Star. Give James Middleton his flower. You're going to have to get your shot glasses ready, because apparently every time I make a point about this man, I'm going to say James Middleton. One would argue that he may be the true King James. You want to talk about James Cash Money Middleton? Off the catch, money, off the dribble, money, the titles handles in the league, the best passes in the league. Half of the things that I just said are true. No, but he does do this thing where anytime he does a two-man game with Giannis, anytime they run like a pick and roll, we'll just use that as an example, anytime he's within 5 to 7 feet of the basket, he's got these really sneaky and deceptive pocket passes that he'll do. Sometimes they're little bounce passes. Sometimes he'll literally throw it in between his legs. He had one in Game 3 against Atlanta tonight that actually ended up in just being the most ridiculous turnover I'd ever seen in my life. But he's very sneaky, flashy with his passes, okay? And he's going to get to his spot, so you don't know as a defender what he's going to do, because he can hit from anywhere on the floor. He's a 3-level scorer. But again, he is a really, really good facilitator. So then you also have to factor in that the guy that he's running the two-man game with is Giannis freaking Antetokounmpo. And we'll get back to Khris in just a second. I'm gonna do my little Giannis thing real quick. I think it is really lame and, as a matter of fact, insincerity at its peak that we can go through these playoffs and we focus so much on Giannis's free throw shooting or lack thereof, and his three-point shooting, again, or lack thereof. And because of those two things, we diminish and just conveniently forget that he's having one of the most historic and dominant playoff stretches in recent memory. And you know what really helps when you have that and you need to be bailed out sometimes? That's not, Giannis doesn't need to be bailed out. Actually, as a matter of fact, they're the first duo to each have 30 and 10 inside of a single game. They've done it 3 times. It's an NBA, I don't know how to articulate this point. They are really, really good together. And the most insane thing is that there is still a pocket of Bucks fans that just disparage Khris Middleton, like to this day. Especially the contract extension didn't help when he got that 2 years ago, but still to this day. Listen, my grandma told me that she doesn't like it that I keep calling you guys idiots in my videos, so I'm going to try to not do that. But grow up. It's so weird. Like I mentioned, the national perception on him is just this ever-changing spectrum that you kind of, any given day, it's going to be a different thing. Tonight, everybody loves Khris Middleton. Tomorrow, everyone's going to love Khris Middleton. Who knows? That could change in Game 4. You don't know. Because a guy who can go thermonuclear and give you 20 points in a quarter and then the next night just go 6 of 22 from the game, like I get why some people would be a little bit hot and cold with him, considering he himself is very oftentimes hot and cold. But the only reason I think it's weird, and I don't mean to, I'm going to use Jaylen Brown as an example, not because it's a good one, but just because he's like well, here's what I'll say about Khris Middleton. Khris Middleton is the closest thing that we have to Klay Thompson in the NBA right now. But I don't think it's fair to compare anybody to Klay Thompson. I think it would only be fair, at the very least, to just use Jaylen Brown as an example, because, again, just an elite two-way wing in the league. If Jaylen Brown has a bad game or a bad 2 games or 3 game, bad stretch of games, you're just kind of like, oh, it sucks. Jaylen Brown will get better, though. How'd Jason Tatum do? If Khris Middleton has a bad game, God rest his soul, because Twitter is going to absolutely eviscerate him. And I don't totally understand why. Like, where does all this Khris Middleton hate come from? Where's all the Giannis hate? Why don't people like Giannis? This is a genuine question. If you're going to be a dick in the comments, don't do it. But why don't people like Giannis? If you are somebody who doesn't like Giannis, can you explain to me why? Because genuinely, I don't get it. So explain that to me. I think one of the reasons why maybe using Jaylen Brown in this case isn't the best example is because, and I don't know if Celtics fans do this, but other fan bases do when they talk about the Celtics, is like people will make a case that Jaylen Brown is Boston's best player. Like that's a real thing that people will talk about. I am not advocating either way. I do not personally care. But like you look at a guy like Khris Middleton, he never in a day in his life will ever be the best team on a basketball player. Let me tell you something. That is not a bad thing. That is not a slight towards James Christian Middleton. That is not a bad thing at all. I love the idea of being the ultimate Robin to Giannis's Batman. And I know some people think that dynamic should actually be switched, because when it's crunch time, you probably want Khris Middleton to have the ball in his hands if you need to knock down a shot. But think of the top 10 players in basketball. Even think of the top 5. All of them would be so much better off if they had Khris Middleton. A guy who, again, off the dribble can get to his spots with ease. He can get a shot off in a phone booth. He can defend 1 through 4. Like, there's pretty much nothing about Khris Middleton's game that isn't super well refined. I think that, like, he's a 2-time All-Star. If Khris Middleton was playing for a team that wasn't Milwaukee and he was in a quote-unquote larger market, I legitimately think he would be making an All-Star team like every single year, and it would be a legitimate conversation, more so than it actually is. Where it feels like the last 2 years that he had gotten in, it was more of like, not an afterthought. Can I say that? I'm going to say something about Khris Middleton. The thing about Khris that blows my mind, this perplexes me, is, and I don't know if this is going to make sense, so bear with me. It's like there is a noticeable and almost palpable difference between Khris Middleton taking a shot because he feels like he has to in the moment, and Khris Middleton taking a shot when he's like, oh yeah, I'm Khris Middleton. Like, there's just a confidence difference that, again, feels palpable in the moment because you're like, oh, God, that shot's not going to go in. Or you think of Game 4 against Miami last year when Giannis scores like Milwaukee's first 17 points, then leaves with the ankle injury. Khris Middleton wills them to their only win in that series, and everyone's like, well, they didn't get swept. Good job. But Khris was a gamer. I think he 40-pieced the Heat. Like, every shot that went up, you were like, he's in that mode right now. He is that guy, and it doesn't always feel like he's that guy, which is frustrating because he unequivocally is. Again, I know that Khris is just like a fine mist, and sometimes he'll dissipate in these really big games. You want to know something about James Christian Middleton? He arrives precisely when he means to. And honestly, I don't want to get too speculative and weird and get into like a rabbit hole that I don't need to right now. I'll get to it when Milwaukee and Phoenix inevitably meet in the NBA Finals. But I think that there is definitely a scenario where somehow Khris Middleton could literally end up winning Finals MVP. And I don't think people would bat an eye. I think in the moment, I don't know how Twitter would lose their mind if Khris Middleton won Finals MVP over Giannis. It would be like the Steph nonsense all over again. And it's going to be really devastating for people to stomach the idea of those two, meaning Khris and Giannis. And I think people would be happy for Jrue Holiday. But Khris and Giannis playing in the NBA Finals, that's going to suck for you guys a lot. You guys are going to hate that if it happens. I really hope people are appreciating what he is and that he's just an absolute gamer. And if you forgot who we're talking about, James Christian Middleton.